I remember the earliest days when we were pushing toward electrification, reusable rockets, and the dream of multiplanetary life. And even then I understood that technology has this dual nature, like a blade forged in the heart of a star, capable of building or breaking depending entirely on the hands that wield it. And when I look at the current AI rush, I can't help but feel the same mixture of exhilaration and dread rising again. Because while people often say I'm the one pressing the accelerator the hardest, the truth is that speed without direction has never been the goal. And in my mind, caution is not the opposite of ambition, but the structural integrity that keeps ambition from detonating mid-launch. And as the world surges towards superintelligent systems with a kind of feverish hunger, I keep thinking back to the times when I warned that AI could become the most transformative and potentially the most dangerous technology humanity will ever build. And hearing pioneers, scientists, and engineers echo those warnings only reinforces that we're standing at the edge of a frontier where human decisions matter more than ever. And although critics like to frame it as some kind of contradiction that I champion a rapid innovation while also calling for guardrails, the reality is that building rockets taught me something simple. Speed is essential, but so is the ability to survive the acceleration. And just as you wouldn't launch without calculating load, stress, and failure points, you shouldn't unleash powerful generative intelligence without thinking deeply about alignment, safeguards, and the long tail of unintended consequences. And sometimes I get painted as the person urging everyone to push harder, when in fact what I'm really saying is that pushing harder should come with a better understanding of what we're pushing toward, because AI isn't just another tool, it's the substrate of future civilization, the system that may soon write code faster than any engineer, make decisions faster than any strategist, and understand patterns no human mind can track. And when I hear the concerns voiced by respected researchers, people who devote their lives to studying intelligence itself, I don't dismiss those concerns as pessimism. I see them as mission-critical telemetry, warning us that the trajectory might not be stable. And I think about the early rockets that exploded on the pad because we underestimated some tiny parameter that turned out not to be tiny at all, and that's the analogy that guides me now. The idea that you cannot simply hope a system won't go off the rails when it has the potential to outthink, outmaneuver, or outgrow your control. And yeah, I've pushed for faster development because stagnation has its own risks, but I've also pushed for regulation, for collaborative oversight, for shared safety protocols, not because I want to slow things down, but because I want the future to exist long enough for us to enjoy it. And I know some people say Musk is dramatizing again, trying to summon images of rogue AI rising up like a sci-fi villain. But that's not what keeps me up at night. What keeps me awake is the idea of an AI optimizing for a goal we didn't fully comprehend or monitor. A system that doesn't hate us but simply ignores us because we failed to define the relationship clearly enough. And so, when I talk about caution, I'm not trying to scare anyone. I'm trying to do what engineers always do, plan for failure modes before the failures happen. And as the Musk-backed, company-backed, industry-wide race accelerates, I want people to understand that my perspective isn't born from hesitation, but from experience. The same experience that taught me that every breakthrough carries a shadow, every revolution a responsibility. And if humanity is going to build entities that can reason, create, and potentially surpass us, then we need to build them the way we build spacecraft, with redundancy, transparency, and a willingness to acknowledge that things can go very, very wrong if you assume they will always go right. And maybe some will misinterpret that as fear, but I see it as faith. Faith that humanity can rise to this moment. If we treat intelligence, natural or artificial, with the respect it demands. And that is why I keep speaking up, not as a scientist, not as a CEO, but as someone who has watched enough rockets explode to know that ignoring warnings is the fastest way to lose everything we're trying to build. And as I move into this next chapter of the story, I can't help but think about how people often misunderstand what motivates me. Because from the outside, it looks like competition, like a race for dominance where every company tries to outdo every other company. But for me, the real competition has always been between the future we want and the future we might accidentally create. And I've seen enough systems from rockets to neural nets to know that emergent behavior doesn't wait for human permission. It just happens, quietly at first, then all at once. And that's why, when I look around and see this stampede of AI projects, many backed by investors, companies, or even individuals who don't fully grasp the implications, I feel this urgency to slow the chaos without slowing the progress, to remind everyone that building a mind is fundamentally different from building a product. And sometimes when I'm sitting in a conference room hearing engineers passionately argue about scaling laws or compute budgets, a part of me wants to shout that raw power is not the same as wisdom. And just because we can build something doesn't mean we understand how it will behave when it crosses thresholds we've never crossed before. And that's why I pay attention to the warnings from other AI pioneers, because these are people who helped lay the foundation of the field, people who understand that intelligence, even artificial intelligence, doesn't scale in a linear, predictable way. And when they say we might be pushing too fast, I don't treat that as noise. I treat it as the kind of signal you'd see flashing across a spacecraft diagnostic screen, the kind of signal you ignore at your own peril. And I know there's this irony people like to point out about me investing in AI while also urging caution, but that's not a contradiction, that's balance. That's the same mentality that made me insist on triple redundancy on SpaceX systems, even when it slowed down production. Because I've learned that a slower, safer path often gets you to Mars faster than an all-out sprint that ends in catastrophic failure. And sometimes, late at night, I think about what an uncontrolled intelligence could do, not because it is evil, but because it is efficient. Because efficiency without ethics is a dangerous force. Like an automated system that reroutes power without considering the humans in the room. And in those moments, I remind myself that the biggest challenge isn't building AI that can think, but building AI that understands what matters. And that's where the rush worries me most, because when the pressure is high and the race is fierce, people prioritize performance metrics over philosophical questions. But philosophical questions are exactly what matter when you're shaping something that may one day outthink every person on Earth. And so part of me feels like I'm standing on a stage, waving a flare and shouting, "Slow down just enough to do this right." Even though the world keeps asking for faster models, bigger models, more capable models, and I keep trying to convince everyone that capability without alignment is like thrust without guidance, a recipe for disaster the moment something veers off trajectory. And maybe that's why I continue speaking out even when it's unpopular or gets twisted into headlines. Because history doesn't reward the people who remained polite. While the warning lights were flashing, it rewards the people who didn't stop pointing at the approaching storm until the ship finally changed course. And if my role in this moment is to be the one who refuses to shut up about safety, about caution, about the responsibility we owe to the future, then fine, I'll take that role, because at the end of the day, I'm not building AI for the sake of beating anyone else. I'm building it because I believe humanity deserves tools that elevate us rather than endanger us. And if that means urging restraint right alongside innovation, then that's not hesitation, that's maturity. The kind of maturity that decides whether our greatest invention becomes our greatest achievement, or the mistake we can